Yes, I got passion, no time to break. You don't need no action, cause you on my tree. I pray for watching you, so wash your eye. Watch the TV, cause time for life.
This is why you should always check your back seat. A woman coming home from work decided to drive home. As she's driving, she notices a black car following behind her. And every red light she stops at, this black car will constantly flicker his lights. She began to panic and drove faster and faster, taking every turn she could to get away from this car. As she's driving, she calls her dad and tells her that this car is following her and to meet her in the driveway so she's not alone. She pulled into the driveway and sees her dad waiting outside. Then she sees the car that's been following her pull in right behind her. The man in the black car behind her gets out of his vehicle and runs to her and says, "Get out of your car now." She gets out and the man behind her says, "There is somebody trying to kill you." The man in the black car behind her pulls out a weapon. He shows the woman that there has been a man in her back seat, and every time he would flash his lights, it was because the man was about to stab her.
Did you hear about the tragic accident that happened on the Pirates of the Caribbean ride? Because of this accident, there's apparently a real ghost that lives inside this ride. The ghost is said to be a construction worker named George. But during the construction of this ride, George was unfortunately crushed by a large piece of the set that killed him instantly. So now it's said that his spirit lingers there, and staff members have to say good morning to him when they arrive to work and farewell when they leave. If they don't, he'll make life tough for them by causing the Pirates of the Caribbean ride to malfunction and break down throughout the day. It's said that he especially likes to haunt any females that go on this ride. There's been complaints of their hair being pulled or being poked on the back, but the saddest thing is that shortly after the theme park opened, a sad-looking older woman would periodically visit the attraction and ask to ride alone. Cast members then reported seeing her speak to nobody and sobbing into her ride boat. And then apparently it was revealed to be George's heartbroken mother, which is horrible.
Sometimes reality is stranger than fiction. In 2010, a couple renting a cabin in the middle of the woods finds the guest logbook tucked underneath the bed in the bedroom. After reading through it, they decide to call the cops. The final 5 entries are all by the same man. The first 2 are just talking about how great it is to be on vacation with his girlfriend. Then it starts to get weird. In the 3rd entry, he describes a stranger lurking in the tree line that doesn't respond to his waves. In the 4th entry, he hears knocking on the windows in the middle of the night, but no one's there. In his 5th and final entry, his handwriting is barely legible, and it just says, "It's in the bathroom, we're going to die." The police show up and find the girlfriend's body in the basement. Next to her body was her purse, and in her purse was her phone. When they open it up, they see that she texted her mother one last time, and it just says, "Mike's starting to act crazy. I think he's off his meds again." Remember, your Amazon Alexa is always listening. In 2018, a girl named Alexa came home to her apartment to find her creepy stalker landlord in her kitchen. She screams and threatens to call the cops, and he just smiles and says, "I was just checking in on you," and leaves. Feeling totally sketched out, she spends the next few hours down the hall in her friend's apartment before finally going back to her room to go to bed. That night, she woke up to her Amazon Alexa responding to someone in the room. It said, "I'm sorry, I couldn't hear you. Did you say I'm watching you?" The girl instantly turns on her lights and looks around, but no one's there. So she unplugs Alexa and is about to go back to sleep when she hears what sounds like a man grunting in her closet. As she's staring at her closet, her Alexa turns back on.
This is why you should always lock your front doors. A kid living with both of his parents decided to watch a movie for their family weekly movie night. He then gets up to use the restroom. As he is in the restroom, he sees all of the power in the house cuts off, and then he hears 2 loud thumps. He locks the bathroom door and hears heavy objects being dragged across the hallway. The kid, freaking out, runs out of the bathroom and runs into the restroom. Once he is inside the room, he locks the door. As he locks the door, he jumps in bed and acts like he's asleep in hopes that this person who is in the house will ignore a child sleeping. He closes his eyes and hears the door creak at the same time. He squints his eyes and sees a man with no eyes dragging the bodies of both of his parents. The man dragging his parents sits his mom's dead body in a chair facing him, and then sets the dad's body on the floor facing up. It was almost like whoever was in the house who killed them wanted him to see it. He then sees the man writing something on the wall and then climbs under his bed. He laid there for hours knowing that if he moved a muscle, he would end up just like his parents. He finally built up enough courage to read the wall, and the writing on the wall said,
This is why you never judge a book by its cover. On the evening of August 7th, 1985, police received a call about a mentally ill woman attacking her family with a gun. When police arrived at her residence, they didn't hear any shooting or hear any noises coming from inside the house. Police tried yelling for the shooter to come outside, but when she didn't listen, they went in. Inside was a massacre. All 5 family members have been killed, including 2 young children. One of the deceased was Sheila Bamber, the mentally ill woman the police have been called about, and she was holding a rifle that was tucked up against her neck with a gunshot wound underneath her chin. This case gained massive media attention, putting pressure on the police to solve it as quickly as possible, and so they jumped to the conclusion that this had to be a murder-suicide perpetrated by Sheila. But one detective felt like they were missing something and kept investigating. And sure enough, he found something hidden under the stairs at the crime scene that meant Sheila could not be the shooter. To find out what's under the stairs and who the shooter is, check out the Murders at White.
There is a creepy lost episode of Barney that a father swears he caught his kids watching. One day he was looking at the TV guide when he saw that it said a lost episode of Barney was going to air at 7 p.m. He asked his kids if they wanted to watch, and they said yes. They all sat down to watch it, and the theme song started playing, but something wasn't right about it. It almost sounded like the song was being whispered. The episode started as it usually did, the kids holding the Barney doll that suddenly comes to life. But when Barney started talking, he sounded slightly weird. It sounded like 2 people were talking at once. His normal voice and one that sounded darker and scarier. And suddenly he said,
"Hi kids, today I'm going to talk to you about death."
So one of the kids asked him,
"Barney, what's death?"
He then chuckled and said,
"This is."
with his face suddenly turning angry, his teeth growing long, and then he eats the child. And then he proceeds to chase all the other children around, trying to eat them throughout the rest of the episode. And then at the very end of the episode, he sang the I Love You song as if nothing happened. Here are the most bizarre things that have ever happened at Disney World. There was a time where a couple tried to smuggle a baby onto Space Mountain. A couple was in line to ride Space Mountain when their duffel bag started to make noise, and the couple refused to open it. So the cast member called security, and when they opened the bag, they saw a 6-month baby inside of it. The baby was okay, but my goodness. People try to spread their loved one's ashes in the Haunted Mansion. This actually happens way too often, and cast members have to try and stop it as much as they can. It causes the ride to shut down temporarily for an emergency ash cleanup. A husband made a very bizarre announcement at Cinderella's castle. The family of 4 came in for dinner, and about halfway through, the husband politely stands up and he announced that his wife of 15 years had been cheating on him. Wow. In 2007, Tigger punched a teenager in the face. Apparently the boy was messing with Tigger's costume and Tigger wanted him to stop and he didn't, and then punched him in the face.
The more you think about how this true story ends, the creepier it gets. In 2015, a college student was renting the basement apartment of his friend's house. One weekend, his basement roommates take off for the night, so he decides to use that time to get some homework done distraction-free. But as soon as he sits down to do his work, his friend upstairs and his family starts making all this noise, moving furniture around, shuffling feet. It's impossible to focus, so he picks up his phone and he texts his friend. "You guys sound like you're really having a good time up there. I'm not really getting anything done. Can I come up?" And his buddy says, "No one is home. We went to Wisconsin for the weekend." Terrified, he runs out the side door to get a look in the window to see who's making all the noise. All the lights are off in the house. There's not a single car in the driveway. He had been home alone the whole time.
If you're ever driving late at night, don't do what they did. One night, a boy and his friend were on their way to a school dance when they saw a girl on the side of the road looking lost. They stopped the car and asked if she needed a ride, and she asked them to take her home. They said that they were going to a school dance and asked if she wanted to come too. She agreed. But these boys wouldn't know yet that this girl was not an average hitchhiker. So they all got in the car and the girl sat in the back seat. After a while, the girl would constantly say that she was cold, so one of the boys gave her his jacket. They got to the dance and things were pretty normal, but what happened after would make the boys question reality. When the night was almost over, it was finally time to take the girl home. When they almost arrived, the girl told them where she lived, but told them to drop her off close by so she can walk the rest of the way. So that's what they did. But after the girl walked away, the boy who let her borrow his jacket realized that he never asked for his jacket back. His friend said that they could just come back tomorrow for it. The next morning, they came back expecting to get the jacket and leave, but things were not so simple. They came up to the girl's house and knocked on the door, but they were shocked at what they discovered as soon as the door opened. Follow for part 2. Can you imagine being locked inside your house for your whole life? Caroline's aunt and uncle said she was so ugly that she had to be hidden from the world. If anyone saw her, she'd be taken to the church and burned at the stake. But things are not as they seem. One day, Caroline started asking questions. She wanted to know why the other kids could play outside, but she could only sit and look out from her bedroom window. This made her aunt and uncle very angry. They said, "Can't you see yourself? Don't you understand the sacrifices we've had to make to keep you hidden from the world?" She had been convinced that staying trapped was for her own good, but one day she she decided to escape. She used the safety pin to unlock the door and left. However, soon after she made it out, two men wearing uniforms started shouting at her. She began running. Do you know the dark origins behind the fairy tales we all grew up hearing? In this series, I'm gonna draw each fairy tale and tell you the original scary stories they were based on. First, we have the Grimm's version of Snow White. Now, we all know how the story begins. The evil queen was jealous of Snow White's beauty, so she banished her into the woods. But the evil queen actually wanted to eat Snow White's liver and lungs with salt and pepper. The huntsman spared her and gave a boar's liver and lungs to the queen, which she eats. But the darkest part, which you might not know about, is how Snow White actually got revenge. Snow White and the prince got married and they invited the evil queen. Or should I say, tricked the evil queen into attending because they knew that she'd feel jealous enough to do it. And the evil queen actually fell for it. She arrived at Snow White and the prince's wedding, only to find out that they put a pair of iron shoes into burning coals until it heated up and glowed bright red. Then they placed it in front of the evil queen and made her wear those shoes until she danced to her. If a website ever asks you these questions, don't do what she did. Once there was a girl named Masha who heard that there's a new service that gives everyone free internet access, so she decided to use it. But this would lead to something horrifying for Masha and her family. After she connected to this internet service, a web page popped up asking her to register some information, but the questions were oddly personal. It asked, what's your usual mode of transportation? With a photo of a bus, a boat, a train, and a plane. Masha took her bike to school every day, so she clicked on the train instead. But the next day, the local news showed that there was a horrific train crash that killed everyone on board. Masha thought that this was a coincidence, but soon she'd realized that she made a deadly mistake. Later, she needed to use the internet again, so she logged back in. This time it asked, what kind of home do you live in? Along with 4 different pictures of different types of homes. She clicked apartment even though her and her family lived in a house. And the next day, the apartment building near her school burned down. The police suspected arson. Then she went back to the internet server one last time, but this time it showed a photo of her mother, father, sister, and herself with the question, who?
If you scare easily, swipe on. In 1989, a woman started hearing strange banging sounds in her walls and in the ceiling, and then one night the crawl space to her attic was open, so she went to go have a look. When she's just feet away, an old man suddenly appears in the crawl space and looks her dead in the eye before vanishing. There was nobody else in the house. Worried no one's going to take her seriously over an apparent ghost in her house, she ends up calling a paranormal investigator. When the paranormal crew arrived, they were actually very skeptical until they heard loud banging in the attic and they decided to go up and have a look. As soon as the two men get up into the attic, one of them screams and suddenly disappears. The other, who didn't have a flashlight, starts using the flash on his camera to illuminate the attic. And he takes one of the most famous pictures in paranormal history. His partner, who was in total shock, had been lifted off the ground and tied to one of the beams. That was the last night the woman ever stayed in the house. However, it's still being rented out today, but nobody stays longer. This is why you should never explore abandoned ships. In 2014, the US Navy decided to decommission one of its oldest ships, so it brought it into port to be broken down for scrap. Before workers were allowed to actually start breaking it down, the foreman had to go on board and take pictures of every room. So late one night, the foreman spends about an hour walking through this abandoned ship with a flashlight, taking about 100 pictures. When he was done, he emailed the pictures to his boss, who quickly wrote back, "Who's the guy with the axe?" The foreman had no idea what he was talking about, but he noticed the boss had attached one of the pictures that he had just sent him. When he opened it, he nearly fainted. There, in the bowels of the ship, poking his head around a corner, was a faceless man wielding an axe. The foreman had spent over an hour in this hallway and never heard or saw this guy. The Navy searched the ship and never found this guy. They also reviewed security footage of the only entrance, and he never entered or left the ship.